Hello and welcome back to another episode of Cyber Voices, the official podcast of the Australian Information Security Association, otherwise known as AISA. I'm your host, as always, David Willett, and it is my pleasure to have you with us as we explore the diverse voices of the Australian cyber industry. Today's episode is all about the harsh realities facing children in today's online world. My guest shares some real stories about things that have actually happened to real kids online. Some of them you could find a little bit disturbing or upsetting. However, I feel that these are very important to hear. If you are a parent or a guardian who are concerned, please make sure that you take heed of the advice that my guest gives today and check out some other resources online, including some fantastic stuff here in Australia from the eSafety Commissioner on protecting your children online. I'll post those resources in the episode notes. Welcome back, everyone, to Cyber Voices live from CyberCon Australia 2025 here in beautiful Melbourne. I'm your host, David Willett, and today we're shifting gears to focus on one of the most important, if not often overlooked, aspects of cybersecurity, which is protecting our families and children online. Joining me is Bailey Marshall, co-founder of Future-Proof Security, with nearly a decade of experience in cyber operations, penetration testing, and consulting for Fortune 100 companies. Bailey brings the hacker mindset to everything she does, but with a heart for education and empowerment. Whether she's teaching at Black Hat or helping parents have meaningful conversations with their kids about online safety, Bailey is a true online safety hero, and I'm very, very excited to have her in the CyberCon booth with me today. Bailey, welcome to CyberCon and welcome to Cyber Voices.
Thank you. I am so excited to be here. I did not think that I would get the opportunity to start taking this conversation internationally. It's really challenging to talk about children and safety because it is a hard topic that I won't say people tend to shy away from, but as soon as it comes up, it's a challenging emotional reaction, and it's not necessarily all technical. It becomes something that people don't necessarily want to talk about because it's uncomfortable and it affects a lot of people really, really closely. And so I tend to see that when these conversations come up, it's, well, let's step back and look at the technical sides of these conferences rather than the emotional, psychological sides.
Yeah, and I think many of us as cyber professionals, we get so focused on our individual organizations and what we're doing there that we also remember that we have families and communities that we need to protect and serve who don't know as much about this as we do.
Right, absolutely. And I mean, even if you're not a parent, a lot of us are educators or have impact on young adults and teenagers in some sort of form or fashion. And if we're not that, everybody in the, say, cybersecurity conference community has a tech background. And so we do things that affect other people on a daily basis, whether it's just product development, whether it's security of those products, a lot of bigger companies that are working with algorithms and things like that, AI especially nowadays. So we all have an impact on young minds equally, even if you're not a parent or a guardian of a child.
So you came to talk to us today, and I mentioned this before, the hidden shadows of an online childhood. Where did this talk come from?
So about a year ago, my co-founder of Future-Proof Security and I, we didn't have it at the time, but we were submitting for a local B-Sides because we were really good friends. We wanted to present together. Really, that was the bottom line. We just wanted to present something together because it would be really cool. And so we were really racking through our minds, well, what do we want to present? She was a blue teamer, I'm a red teamer. We both got extensive cybersecurity backgrounds, and we're like, well, what can we co-present that is something that we both have experience in? And she's got a little bit older kids, like 10 and under, and I've got young kids. And so one of the days that we were brainstorming, we're like, well, what if we talk about cybersecurity and our families and the way that the technical community actually experiences things through the lens of their families? And we were like, yeah, let's just do it. Let's go and let's have this conversation because it's something that we can both be passionate about. And so we took this conversation to a small B-Sides in South Carolina in the States. And we were like, "Oh, we don't know how people are going to respond." It's not a technical conversation because most people come to cybersecurity conferences or meetups and they expect, well, I want to know how to hack the latest, do all of the AI prompts and hack Chat GPT or something like that. And they want to find out all of the new technical stuff. And so we're like, well, we don't know how this is going to be received because it's not really technical, even though we do bring a technical perspective on it because we talk about online scams, we talk about, safe use of passwords and OSINT and things like that. We just weren't sure. And so we went and we had that conversation. We were really geared up for this. And the feedback that we had was so incredibly powerful. And we did not realize that so many people felt like this conversation needed to be had. And we realized that nobody was doing it. That's why we presented it, because we realized it was kind of one of those things that wasn't really spoken about, especially at cybersecurity conferences. So it was literally that month where we're like, the world needs more of this. We need to have these conversations, even if they're really challenging. And so future-proof security kind of came into fruition a month later. And that's where we've started having these snowball conversations of, what are the threats? And we've tailored them to smaller audiences and we've tailored them to different locations because we're in the States, but there are different things that Australia, for example, is doing, and they're different than what the European Union's doing. And so really it's the start of the conversation. So, I titled the conversation the way that I did because no matter where you are globally, there's some sort of shadow looming over our children when it comes to online, whether that be social media or whether it be cyber scams or, some of the more challenging topics.
So what have you learned about some of the most common online threats that are facing children today?
Yeah. So some of the things that I've actually learned, because I have done a ton of research on this over the past year that we've been snowballing all of this information together, is cyber scams. To put it on the lighter side, cyber scams can happen to kids under 8 years old. And you kind of think about it and you're like, oh, yeah, that actually can happen because how many kids are playing things like Roblox and Fortnite and they're purchasing these extra packs of things, and there are people out there actually trying to take advantage of that. And I'm thinking to myself, 8 years old and under can get scammed. But then there are some of the more challenging topics like how their data is being used, how generative AI is being used to expose them in ways that they never consented to. And in places where they have consented to sharing information privately with someone, how that's being used to exploit them and extort them publicly is truly harrowing.
And what are some of the emerging risks as well that you've touched on a little bit there, but what are some of the key messages for parents and educators with their children in this space too?
Yeah, absolutely. And I always hate to say it because it sounds cliche, but communication is the most important thing. But when we talk about communication, it's not just saying, hey, the reason why we built future-proof security was because the narrative that was out there with educational posts, social media influencers was there's a black and a white here. There is either you choose to let your kids have social media and do everything, or you choose to completely blockade them off. And I know that that's a huge conversation here in Australia with the social media bans coming up. We just cut it off from everything. But really what we found is there's no gray conversation. And every family is different because some families have two parents that are working at the same time. And sometimes you just need to flip on the TV, or sometimes you just need to let your kid go play a video game because you've got to get work done. And so there really wasn't anybody out there talking about the middle ground. And what the middle ground actually is it isn't just saying you should do this or you shouldn't do this. It's how do we inform parents and educators and those that influence children and young adults' lives? How do we inform them of what the risks are? How do we make them comfortable enough to have a conversation with their kids, which inadvertently establishes a level of trust? And kids, even myself when I was younger, I didn't want to be told what to do. And the second you told me to, not do something, I was going to do it because that's just kids. And we tend to think that if we tell kids no, they're just going to listen. And I know that the challenging conversations that I've had, the most challenging, are with parents that say, nope, not my kid, never going to happen. My kid knows better. My kid doesn't have access to this. Your kid's probably going over to their friend's house and doing it anyway, or they're finding some sort of inadvertent way to sneak around the system. And so really, again, to circle back, it's the communication, and it's not what is communicated, it's how it's communicated and how that relationship between parent, educator, and child actually forms a relationship of trust. Because the number one reason why kids don't report getting affected by scams, getting extorted, sharing inappropriate messages with people or inappropriate pictures and then having them exposed is because they're embarrassed. Embarrassment is the number one cause of children to not report it to someone. And so no matter what the scam is, there's got to be a level of trust where that child can feel comfortable, if not a parent, then an educator or someone that they feel comfortable enough to come to and say, hey, I messed up. I know that there's probably not a clean solution for this, but can you help me?
How do we create that safety or create that psychological safety for children though? Like I can remember thinking when I was a kid, I mean, the internet was still pretty new then. I think we got a dial-up connection when I was around about 14, 15 years old. But like if something I can remember experiencing some online bullying as a child,
Mhm.
even back then in like the late 90s, early 2000s. I remember doing nothing about it because it was a very isolating feeling and I didn't know where to go or who to say. I mean, times have changed a lot, but
Right.
yeah, how do we create that? How do we encourage kids to be able to come forward and speak out about what's happening?
Right. Well, and again, going back to the communication piece, but really where it starts is parents telling children, here are the risks to what could happen. And not in a way that is judgmental, not saying, hey, you're on Instagram, you're on TikTok, you're on YouTube, this is gonna happen to you because you're doing these things. It's, hey, I see that you're on Instagram and this is what I've heard is a threat and that could be a potential possibility that could happen. So if in the case that that does happen, here are the things that you need to know that you can do in order to make sure that you're prepared for if those things happen. It's again, it's not an accusatory thing. The way that I just said that was basically the same thing
Mm.
packaged in a different way. And really, the biggest thing that kids need to understand from a parental perspective is what to do if they get themselves in a compromising situation. And when parents present that in a way, and educators present that in a way that's non-accusatory, it psychologically does establish a level of trust between the parents and the children. Because what I find is that parents and children and educators that children that have this constant back and forth communication where if they bring something to them and they are not judged for it or immediately shut down for it, they're more likely to bring more things to that trusted adult.
Yeah. And I want to loop back as well to something you said at the beginning, right? Because you talk about adults having direct and impactful conversations with kids, which sounds like it should be pretty straightforward. But you mentioned at the beginning that this topic seems to be very uncomfortable for people. Why do you think that is?
I think that the biggest thing is parents don't want to hear that it can happen to them.
Mm.
I think that is, just to put it very bluntly, I think that every parent wants to feel like they're doing the best job,
Mm.
right? And I'm the type of person that I know I am not a great parent, not because I am bad, but because I'm not perfect and I make mistakes all the time. And something that I've really established in our household is that my kids know that mom makes mistakes and I tell them, hey, I messed up. Like, I'm sorry, I made a mistake, but that's the relationship that I've built with my kids and with my husband and with the family members. This is the level of trust that I have because I'm going to admit to my mistakes. But when it comes to, we don't inherently as humans want to be wrong. We don't want to feel bad. We all want to feel like we're inherently good and good at what we do. And that's just not truth. And so when it comes to, is this a hard conversation? There are other reasons why this conversation is uncomfortable because it makes people feel ways when we start talking about some of the darker things that can be, found online and those kinds of things. That inherently is uncomfortable regardless. But I think that we as adults don't want to be in a position where we feel like we're wrong or we feel like we've messed up. And it's okay to admit that it goes back to psychology, really. I mean, I think that it's funny that I have a psychology background previously from my cybersecurity. And I never thought that I would bridge those two things together, but everything is human. And being on a red team and being, kind of on the hacker side of things, I always used to think, well, yes, this is an APT, this is a threat group, but there's a human behind that keyboard. There's a human behind that phone, and it's your child. And so I think that that's something that really wraps us humans up because we're so ingrained in the emotion of it. We don't want to feel like we're wrong. And if something does go wrong, we don't want to feel like it's our fault.
But I imagine when you're talking about this on stage, there must be some pretty impactful real life stories that you must have come across in your research in this space, which really help drive this message home. Is there something that you can share with our listeners to kind of help them appreciate the real life impacts of what's happening online with kids right now?
Yes, absolutely. So there's a couple of different things that I like to pull up in case studies when it comes to these topics. The first thing is, the chat functions of social media. Those are really challenging because it's not just the fact that there is a chat function. It's the fact that adults that are predators are using those functions to prey on vulnerable minors. There is a case study that I bring up every conversation that is a group of 10-year-old girls that play Roblox. And Roblox, inherently, the chat feature itself was not a bad thing. It was the fact that they were on a Zoom call with each other and they would talk constantly and they'd video chat with each other while they're all playing Roblox. And it was just really fun and innocent. And they met someone on Roblox that was, an adult male. And they said, this person feels like we can trust them. Here's the Zoom link. And these are 10-year-old girls. So they don't understand that they can change their Zoom link. They can change their call. They can just not get on there and use something else. So they give this man this Zoom link and he comes on and now has spent 3 months between November 2023 and January of 2024, spends 3 months exposing himself to these girls, putting a gun to his face because that's how they knew that he was a man, on camera, sending exploitive images and also asking for sexual images and threatening them aggressively. And the only reason why these girls decided to report it to their parents and to the teachers at school was because this man in January of 2024 threatened to come and shoot up their elementary school. And that seems like a crazy catalyst, but that was 3 months of innocence that those children do not get back because he was sending nude pictures of himself and threatening them and making them feel uncomfortable. And then, similarly in the Roblox case, there was a Florida woman, 36 years old, convinced a 10-year-old girl to drop her 2-month-old infant sibling on the ground, permanently damaging this child because the 10-year-old had said, I'm having a problem. I have a 2-month-old sibling and I'm not getting as much attention and they cry all the time. And this 36-year-old woman over Roblox not only convinced but instructed this 10-year-old on how to kill this child, to kill this sibling. Now, that did not happen, but the sibling is now permanently damaged because of that. There are also other conversations that I like to bring up that are very challenging. I mean, I get choked up talking about them, especially when it comes to financial sextortion, because I have 2 young boys. And the sextortion that's currently going on right now with the Yahoo boys is a group of Nigerian gentlemen that are basically taking people's Instagram followers. And this is predominantly affecting, teenage boys. They're going and they're adding these teenage boys on Instagram and taking their follower list and saying, I have now 1,000 of your followers, people that know you, family, friends, whatever. And these Yahoo boys are posing as females of the same age and they're coercing them and they're coaxing them. And they say, hey, send me nude pictures, send me inappropriate pictures. I really like you, gaining that trust. And then what happens is these boys end up sending these pictures to, this group. And immediately this group turns around and says, okay, I've got your nude pictures. I've got your follower list. Now I'm going to send these pictures to everybody that's following you and that you follow unless you pay me $500. Something piddly. But for a 15-year-old boy, that's a lot of money, especially now, as I mentioned, embarrassment is the number one thing that keeps teenagers and young children from reporting. And now coupled with the fact that, it's inappropriate pictures of them, that's even more embarrassing. And so what this is leading to is the fact that these kids feel like they have no way out, and the only way out is to commit suicide. And this has specifically led to the death of 20 individuals at minimum 20 suicides by teenage boys. And those are the really hard conversations that I even get choked up on stage because it's so my kids are young, but it's hard. It's hard to have a conversation about and people don't, again, going back, people don't want to hear that. And I don't know why, because I would want to know those threats out there and I want to understand what can happen if I don't action as a parent.
Yeah, and we hear the stories of people with kids where they say like they're up in the room and they're on their computers and they don't know what's going on, and so it could be a lot of what you just described. I mean, it's mind blowing. Even in the first example, like it took me a while just to get past the fact that these poor girls were being traumatized by this man for 3 whole months.
Mhm.
And yeah, when you're a kid, the fear of what this stranger might do, like you believe them, right? If they say, if you go and tell anyone I'm going to do this, they believe it. Thank you for sharing those stories. I know they mustn't be easy to tell, but I think they're really, really important for people to hear. I wonder from your perspective, what is it that you, with the message that you're kind of taking to the world, what is it that you would like to see more of at all of those levels, like governments, schools, tech companies,
Mhm, mhm.
and parents? Where is the sweet spot that helps make the where you would like to see this moving like towards?
Right, right. And I think that is one of the reasons why I felt equipped to have this conversation and myself and my co-founder felt equipped to be the people to have this conversation because we are from the tech community.
Mm.
We know the community. We know people that are high level in some of these organizations that create and manage these products. There are a lot of online advocacy groups, but they're really geared just towards parents. And again, kind of have that black and white, do it or don't do it. But really, what we were trying to do was where's the convergence between policymakers and tech companies and parents and teachers, because it's really siloed right now. And so having these conversations at places like a cybersecurity conference where there are parents and technical professionals in these conferences is really the sweet spot of where we need to be presenting. And right now, someone asked me yesterday, hey, what does success look like for you? And I'm like, I don't know, because success in a year or 5 years is going to be completely different. But right now, having the conversation and starting it is the first step. And then seeing where we can impact at a tech company level, a government level, getting all of the people that need to have this conversation in the same room. I mean, shoot, a lot of us have or work in sales and you're trying to sell your products and stuff. Sometimes you just need to get multiple organizations in the same room to agree. And I'm not working in a sales role for this. I'm just trying to start the conversation, but the concept is still there. You have to get the people in the same room talking. And a lot of times parents and tech companies and policymakers do not. The Venn diagram does not overlap all of the time. And so how do we get those people to have those conversations? Well, it's starting in the middle. It's starting where the parents and the tech companies and the policymakers, that one individual that is all of those things, starting there and working our way out. So that way we can reach just the parents, we can reach just the tech companies or just the government. So starting here in a technical space where there are people that can actually start spreading this like a wildfire, I think that that's where we need to be. And like I said, success in a year or 5 years is going to be completely different, especially because tech is evolving constantly. And the threats that we're seeing right now are going to stay, but they're only going to escalate.
Yeah. And so important that message as well around policymakers and the tech providers actually getting in the same space. And not to go down the rabbit hole of what's going on with our social media bans and all that kind of stuff, but you can very much see that there is a lot of debate online and in the media around, well, it's just putting it all on the tech companies, and the tech companies saying, well, you never came and spoke to us. And they're like,
Mhm.
well, you never came and got in the room with us, right?
Right.
So, and it just sort of seems there's a lot of looking out for, you kind of think the same interests, but they're not really kind of coming together to come forward with that solution. So, yeah, that's a really powerful message. I know you've probably given a lot of messages so far, but I guess what would be the one parting piece of advice, even if it's something that you've already said in the course of the conversation? What's the one piece of advice that you would like to give to every parent or educator listening today?
In addition to everything that I've said, I will leave it with this. Don't be afraid to have the conversation and don't be afraid to engage with it. One of the things that I find as, having a larger social media presence and having these conversations is I will post, I could post something about my coffee on LinkedIn and I'll get 500 likes. But the second I post something about childhood safety, I'll get 5. And I don't really measure it by engagement online because it's not necessarily about that. It's about starting the conversation. But the more that we restrict ourselves from sharing the message, the less it gets out. And so for anybody that's listening that this resonates with or that heard my talk and, feels impacted by it, the conversation needs to continue. I am just one person. Future Proof Security is just one organization. But other people engaging and sharing and spreading the information, that's huge. And that's where we really start to make a difference. Kind of that squeaky wheel gets the grease sort of metaphor. I mean, that's really what it is. And despite the discomfort, and that may be a big deterrent for a lot of people to have this conversation, but it has to start somewhere. And so I hope it starts here.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for blessing us with such an important message and important talk here at CyberCon. We are very, very lucky that people like yourself are willing to travel halfway across the world to talk to us about these things. And I'll let you get out there and enjoy the rest of CyberCon and the rest of your first trip to Melbourne. And I'll finish with thanking you for sharing your voice with us today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Cyber Voices. Our music is by Sonar Garut, our show artwork is by Studio Quarantine, and we record our show at This Is a Studio in Pran, Melbourne, part of Popplant Productions. Please make sure you follow the show on your podcast platform of choice and leave us a 5-star review. This will help others find the show. Also, please follow the association on LinkedIn and Instagram. If you want to add your voice to our ever-growing chorus of diverse cyber voices, have questions, feedback, or would like to be a sponsor, you can do so by emailing us at cybervoices@aisa.org.au. That's cybervoices@aisa.org.au. Are you an AISA member? If not, you should consider joining our network of over 12,000 members across Australia. An AISA membership can open doors, build professional networks, create lifetime friendships, and offer exclusive training, events, and other perks. Become a member today by heading to our website at aisa.org.au. That is all for today. I hope you will join us again next time on Cyber Voices.